Hi Chanel, how are you?
Hi, Lené. I am great and I'm super excited for what's going to happen today.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the talk, and I think we actually want to get away from this scenario where you say nothing to your child for years, and then suddenly you're like, listen, we have to talk about sex, and everybody falls from their chairs because what is mom and dad doing? But I think the approach that we want to take today is that. Um, we have laid a foundation for our children to understand what we have to discuss next. But it's also true that maybe many parents that's watching this have not laid a foundation. And at some stage, you have to explain to a child a bit more of the mechanics of how sex works. And we just want to say, okay, so when you have now come to this point and you have to bridge this place or this question of what sex is, here are just a few practical tips of how you can approach it. So the first thing, if we jump right in, is that you need to ask your child, do they know what sex is? Have they heard about it? From whom have they heard about it? And what do they know about it? And I think the biggest important thing when you start testing the waters is that your child feels safe that you are speaking about this and that they do not feel that anybody is going to be in trouble for telling them something or that they have heard about something. Because let's say that they've now heard it from a friend. They are still in awe or in shock. They didn't come to you to speak to you about it, maybe because they did not trust you, because the foundation was not there, or just because they're really shy. So now when you approach it, they might feel but they're in trouble for knowing anything. So the first thing is to create that safe space. Now, also, just before we give more practical tips, is this age group, we are suggesting that you can start having this talk from the age of 9. Now, it seems very early, and that is not the ideal. We actually want to only introduce this, Chanel, maybe you can correct me, but standard grade 7, grade 8, that age group. But unfortunately, children get exposed to sex much earlier on in life, even if it's just a friend speaking about it. So even if they're just introduced to the vocabulary, it already, tickles their curiosity, like what is happening with this. Then also, they may have been exposed to many wrong things. Or let's say, a naked picture like we've spoken in before it, and they start asking questions, but why is this person doing this? And again, us as parents need to start laying the foundation to make sure that our children get the right information. If we are first, that would be the greatest. But if we are not, let's teach them um, what is the best to do. Now, something I just want to add here, we are reviewing the comprehensive sex education um, curriculum that the schools are currently doing. And we started with grade 4, and we are really happy with the information, but they do mention sex, the word sex, even though they do not ever discuss it in detail. And if you go on in grade 5, grade 6, they don't really speak about sex and what it is, but they do mention sex. So children will come and ask the questions, and it's best that we as parents prepare them. So the thing that we want to suggest, that when you introduce this topic to your child, is that you first show them the bigger picture. And like we have said before, when children ask questions, we want to focus on the physical, the family, and the future. And today we want to put it in reverse and maybe say, okay, let's start with the future so that your child can understand the destiny and why there is something like sex. So maybe Chanel, you can elaborate and just say, tell us, what do you do in terms of the future? How do you speak to your child about sex?
Thank you, Lené. And it's definitely true. We have to prepare our children for this information and the safe environment of the family is the best place to open these files, and what you want to input, what you want to put into these files with regard to future, is that God designed sex to be in marriage, to be enjoyed. It is something special, it is something good within the boundaries of a marriage. So we can really excite our children about their own marriages, even from a young age. I remember one thing that I did, that's maybe a practical tip for parents, is I had a journal, a book, that I put pictures in of wedding dresses and of what I want my house to look like. And I wrote many letters to my husband, which is something that I actually shared with my husband when we got married. But it also created within me this focus of there is a bigger destiny than just the here and the now. So it's important that our children know that God created sex mainly to make people. It was his plan on how to get people on earth. But it's not always the case that when a mom and a dad has sex within the boundaries of marriage, that there will be a child conceived. We will speak a little bit later about contraceptives, but just at this stage, they just need to know that sex is designed by God for the marriage. Its primary goal, designed by God, was to have more siblings. But we listen to God and we follow his heart and his voice, and we know when we should go on to the next step to get another child into the family. So for the future part, we just want to excite them and really give them a goal to work towards. If you can see where you're going towards, if you have one big yes, that yes being, I want to have sex within the boundaries of marriage with my husband and my wife, then it's easy to say no to the small questions and the small temptations that come along their path. So help your children to make that big yes. Then with regard to family, it's important to make your child feel wanted, feel safe, rejoice audibly and regularly about how excited you are that they are part of your family and that God designed in the specific way, and that you prayed for God to give you this beautiful child, and that even though you might have secretly wanted in your heart your first one or your last one or whatever to be a boy or a girl, we never express those emotions towards our children, not at this age. Maybe later, when you're adults, you can discuss that life sometimes brings disappointments, but that God has the perfect design and plan. At this stage, it's of vital importance that our children know that we rejoice with regards to the gender that they are. We hear of so many adults really having a lot of emotional issues, being stuck with this, my dad wanted a boy and I was a girl, so he raised me as a boy. I had to chop wood and I had to do whatever the boys had to do because my dad didn't have a boy. And that really, it just does damage. We can deal with our own disappointments and trust that God knows better, and really rejoice about the gender of our children. So with regard to family, once again, the boundaries that God designed for sex to be is within marriage. And it's very important to really put emphasis on values, the big why. Why do we not have sex outside of the boundaries of marriage? It's because that's the way that God designed it, and that there's a blessing and a protection. And in that covenant, it is beautiful and it is good, and it is there's consent and there's unity, and it's designed specifically for marriage. And that one day they will have their own families. One day they will have their own children, and the exact same way that they were designed with a seed from daddy planted into mommy's vagina, growing into a baby, that same way, one day they will have that with their marriage partner, and really cultivate that excitement and that hope, because all that they see around them nowadays is it's okay to have sex whenever, with whoever, however, how many times ever. And we must really help our children to distinguish between the God design and the we do whatever we want. This is the here and the now is all that matters that we see in the world. So make them truly excited about the future that God designed for them.
what we also need to make clear, let's say we are ourselves in a broken family or a broken marriage, divorce or somebody that passed away. And let's say you are explaining this to your child, or let's say you are even not yet married to your wife, but your child is already a certain age for them, and you're having this talk with them, is to first of all be truthful where you're at, and to explain to your child that in a broken world that we live in, things do not always work out, but that God has a purpose and a plan, and that we want to be obedient to God as much as we can, because that is our heart's desire, is to see God's purposes for us fulfilled in our life. And when we from a young age um, bring children the truth about our circumstances, so that they also know it's not hypocrisy, but we also show them the vision and the truth of God, His reality, then children are just have a better foundation to make these choices, because they themselves, let's say they are in a family where mom and dad is divorced, they know themselves the pain that goes with a divorce. But when they know that God maybe has a better plan for them, then again, they have the option at least to make better choices. Now, you explained future and family, Chanel, and I think then the physical, and this is the maybe the hardest part for parents, but it doesn't have to be. And we do not have to over-explain, and we do not have to tell them everything. The basic knowledge that a child has to have is to understand that that plants a seed in mom's tummy for a baby to develop. And how it happens is that a sperm or the seed moves along the penis, and it is planted through mom's vagina into the uterus. And that's actually the only thing that I need to understand. Now, it might totally gross them out, like, this has to go there. But, they can get over that emotion. And obviously, if they have more questions, you can ask it. Now, my suggestion would be two basic things. First of all, is to just use a puzzle piece that has a little poopy and a little hole, and to show this is representing the penis, and that is representing the vagina, and that the penis has to go in. And obviously, you've used a puzzle piece earlier, in an earlier age, you suggested it, but now you give it names. And then also just a basic book with basic illustration. My suggestion would be that the illustration is from all the people, so that they can make the correlation from mum and dad, so not just a boy and a girl picture. And definitely not something graphic like dad lying on top of mom type thing. Just this is the penis, and you can show maybe the anatomy of the vagina. There's a little hole, and the two has to go together. And more than that, they do not need to know at this stage. They don't need to know the emotional intensity for that comes with sex and the bonds and relationships and all of that. Some of it you will share with them maybe later in the high school years, and some of it is left up to them to explore when they are married. So we do not have to tell them everything. Now, like I said, this obviously might bring up quite a few questions, and my suggestion is that you move with children and according to their age. And you don't have to always explain. Use this physical family future. Be honest and truthful, but don't over-explain. So, Chanel, maybe you can just share with us, what do we do now with all these many questions that maybe comes to our side, especially after we've had the talk?
I think most parents just want to run away and hide for a little while until they forget, or until someone changes the topic. But this is really a beautiful time to once again cultivate that safe zone of here we can really speak about and get the right information, because that's our biggest focus. Is we do not want false information like the stork, like we've spoken earlier, to distort their picture of this. So my suggestion would be, on a fun way, to really make it a part of family evening. So once a week, you can discuss the questions that come up. And a practical way to do that is to maybe have a jar or a box or a container that they can write questions on anonymously. Obviously, you will know which one of the children because you know them, but anonymously, so that they can write whatever they want, and to say that they can write any question that they have. They can put it in the jar. You will obviously have to read the questions from the question jar before the evening, because if you have children that are younger and the question are not designed for younger ears yet, then you can obviously address that specific question on the private date that you have with your child. Like we've mentioned earlier, it should be standard to have a private date with each child. It doesn't have to be weekly. If it's once every 2 weeks or once a month, that your child knows, I am going to get a special ice cream or a special walk in the park or something that is just me and mom and me and dad, both parents individually, so that they know that they can, if they've got a question that they think dad will be a little bit better with or that they feel more comfortable, they can ask it there. But on this evening of the family night, you open the question jar and you discuss this question. You've already go and do your research. So if it's a question that you don't necessarily know the answer, or you know, but you don't quite know how to explain it, go do your research. If you've got a book that you can even bring along to the evening, that will be good. So then you discuss this in a safe, open family manner. And if you cultivate this tradition from a young age, like 9 years old, you will have that safe zone where your children know on a weekly basis or once a month, I know where to take these difficult questions. If a question pops up in between this time and you've built this relationship so that it's an open communication relationship, then answer that question on the spot, but still write your question on a paper and put it in the question jar, because I'm sure that there are other people in the family that would like to hear that. So really make it a fun family thing. Speaking about sex is not something that should be done hush-hush or only behind closed doors. Look, we don't go out and sit in the spur and say sex and penis. We don't do that. But we must have an open relationship and know that within the boundaries of our home and in a private space with mom and dad, it is safe to say these words. It is safe to speak about it. Let your children know that there are privacy and there are boundaries, and we're not going to just throw it out there, but we want to have that open channel so that we can speak about it. So that, let's say there's an incident at school, one of your child's friends or someone in an older grade brings a pornographic magazine or a condom, or someone kicks explicitly on the stairs, and they want to speak to you about this. They know that it's okay. And I just want to once again emphasize what you said, Lené. It's so important that they know that they are not in trouble for sharing this, because that's one of the main reasons why children who are molested keep quiet, is because they already feel guilty and they feel that they're going to be punished. But if we explicitly say that this is a safe zone and you won't be punished, and we will maybe change the wording a little bit, we will maybe give the right description to what you've just mentioned, we will tweak the situation, but it's safe. You're not in trouble, you won't be punished, and we will work with what is in front of us. And then you need to keep your end of the bargain as a parent. So when they come with the question, or when they say that I lifted the girl's dress to see what was underneath there, and now you can't now scold them for that. You need to say, okay, this is not how we do it. I can see that you were curious, but remember we've spoken about this, and just diffuse the situation. So even if your child was the one in the wrong or the one making the fault, it's still very important that they know that I can get grace and guidance from my parents, because they need it from us most of all.
We will discuss this more in later videos, but it is very important then, to involve the other parents as well, and obviously solve the situation, look at the bigger picture. The last comment on what you said, I really like the dinner table because both mom and dad is there. And it is important that children know that I can go both to mom and dad. When the one or the other is not available, I can still go to them. And like you said, shouldn't be something that we just take for granted. How can I maybe explain myself? It shouldn't be just thrown, you're back and forth sex, but it should, in the privacy, still be a very comfortable topic to speak about. Now, the last thing, we might giggle about this, but the last thing that we quickly want to address today is what do you do when your child walks into the room while you're having sex? And this can happen, even though you've really been very careful to be as private, things happen. Maybe you didn't lock the door or whatever. And based on today's talk, we can really say that you need to stay truthful. Obviously, you maybe stop, and I don't know if you grab the blankets or what do you do in that moment. But when you have gotten your gears and everything together, is to explain to your child that this is good and it's from God, first thing. That they do not put shame to sex. They don't want to make that correlation. And then explain to them, this is just the way how dad puts the seed in mom's body with his penis through a vagina. So again, you don't have to over-explain. If they have more questions, you can tell them. If you have more questions, you can ask, because they might have an endless range of questions. Like, I cannot even think of examples because, like, children have questions that you're not prepared for them.
Well,
But
one they ask is, what were the funny noises we heard? And that might be the reason why they're coming into the room. So yeah, so you must have an answer ready for the noises. It's like when I tickle you and you laugh because you enjoy it. I make noises because what daddy does, I am enjoying.
Yeah, be careful, even if it's very uncomfortable, but answer them. I think the best thing is not to shy away from it. And yeah, if you're fortunate enough not to handle that, bless you, bless your soul. For me personally, I do not hope it happens. But the big thing is children should not feel ashamed about it. So if you have any comments or questions, please email me or Chanel. We would love to chat to you guys. My email address is in the comments box below. And thank you, Chanel, for your time again. I'm looking forward to next week's talk.